If you're seeking memory training because of forgetfulness or information overload, you're not alone, but you're probably not practicing properly. And I've been there. In fact, if I hadn't discovered the exact techniques that I'll show you today, which yes, involve throwing this weird little ball around, I doubt I would have finished my PhD, learned multiple languages, or delivered one of the most viewed TEDx talks on memory in history. So for the past 15 years, I've not only practiced all kinds of weird things to train my memory, but I've helped people around the world experience similar or even better results than my own. And here's what we all can learn really, really quickly and understand. The memory improvement things that I'll talk about today that sometimes involve cards, sometimes involve little journals, it's not a gimmick, not at all. Your memory can be trained with simple things and sometimes more complicated things, but you need to use the right processes, the right exercises that match the exact goals that you have for your mind and your memory. I mean, you wouldn't go to the gym expecting results without using the proper equipment for working the exact muscles that you're looking for, right? And a lot of people come to me and they say, well, I just want to improve my memory generally. I just want to improve my thinking and concentration overall. And that is possible. But you have to start with the specifics and improve your memory and your mind with the techniques that are aligned with what it is that you specifically want to improve. So let's start with techniques that are deceptively simple and easy to do. And really, they just involve getting yourself some balls. And they don't have to be juggling balls specifically, and you don't have to juggle, although I can juggle. Basically, the two things that you want to do to just get your brain hopping and starting to improve your focus and concentration is just throw a ball and catch it, and try to catch two balls at the same time. I'm like talking while I do it and dropping them on the floor. That's okay. You can drop them. But literally just doing something like this is going to open up so much of your focus and concentration. Now, this isn't something I would normally do with a microphone in front of me, but actually that little bit of an obstacle and barrier makes my brain have to focus on more areas. And you might be thinking, well, what the heck does this have to do with memory? Well, memory starts with paying attention. It starts with focus. It starts with concentration. And you can't really remember details that you aren't focused on or concentrating on. And that's another thing that you can do with two balls before you even try juggling three, is just rotate them around your hands and watch with your eyes. And that movement of your eyes through space is going to be very good in helping you focus. Now, there are many, many exercises that you can do like this. I actually got these juggling balls from Tony Buzan, and I've always kept them, and I pull them off the shelf pretty much a couple times a week and just do different things with them that may or may not involve juggling. And if you want to add the juggling component, there's a video from years ago where I show reciting the alphabet backwards while juggling. And it's just that level of focus and concentration practice that then when you need to remember things, you're much more in the moment. You're paying attention to things because you've done some attention, focus, concentration exercises that are physical and use your eyes and so forth. So you're grabbing information. And when it comes to helping you read, these kinds of things where you're tracking an object with your eyes help with reading, because reading involves target scanning. And so your eyes are much stronger at following lines in text. So don't take this as a silly suggestion. Literally get yourself some juggling balls and use them in the ways that I just demonstrated. And if you're listening to the Magnetic Memory Method podcast version of this video, make sure to get subscribed on the YouTube channel. Hit that thumbs up for the love of memory, because going deeper and deeper all the time into not just the new things that I discover about memory techniques, but also continually coaching ourselves to use the classic techniques, the ancient tradition of memory, so that we don't forget. There's a lot of coaching involved because we don't want to forget. We don't want to get lapse. We don't want to get weak, and we want to raise all ships in this mission of helping all people have sharper focus, concentration, and memory. All right, mnemonic linking is something you're going to do a lot better when you have warm-ups, and you now have a very, very simple warm-up that is very inexpensive when you just get a couple of balls to throw around in the air. Mnemonic linking is one of the best means of forming connections between information that you already know and then new things that you want to remember. So when you start with paying attention and your eyes are stronger while you're reading, then the next step is to link and to keep things simple. Let's just say you have a target list of information in a sentence that you've read, and it's really just something like apple, book, and dog. Rather than memorizing these mundane words using rote repetition, you can exercise your memory by turning the words into a story that links them together. And this is the principle of linking. Now, there are many different kinds of linking, but the simplest way to start is like this. An Apple computer crashes from the sky, knocking over a book that's held in the jaws of Superman's dog. And the sillier that linking story is, the better, the more you're going to remember it. And I know you're thinking, well, I don't really have to memorize words like that. What about some of that Latin you're always quoting? Like, nihil minus est, omnis occupati quam vivere, which is from Seneca, and it basically means don't busy yourself with the busy stuff of life. Get busy with the big stuff, like throwing balls around in the air to sharpen your focus. The process is exactly the same, more or less. It's just taking each word and linking them together. Basic linking was introduced many thousands of years ago, and we can go into the ancient Greek history of the memory palace, which we will a little bit later. But in our time, people my age, we remember the memory greats like Harry Lorraine and Tony Buzan, who gave me these juggling balls. And those guys built on the work of someone named Bruno First. And he had this You Can Remember course, which was sent out week after week, the little envelopes inside of this box, and really interesting stuff. And the premise was that you would have links that were established as hooks, and you would have something like, well, one is a bun. And if you had to memorize juggling ball, then you would have the bun linked to the juggling ball by having a juggling ball inside of a bun, and even imagine yourself eating it. And it would taste really, really horrible. But you'd remember that that was the first thing, because one rhymes with bun, and then you have the target information in the bun. Is it basic? Yes. But using linking in this way trains your association, and you get some practice in magnetic association, creating links. And it's a powerful foundational skill, and it's something that you can do daily. So as a daily exercise to train your memory through association, take things that you need to remember, just simple things like facts in books, and practice turning them into linking stories. That's one of the easiest ways to get into this, and then you can get more and more complicated as we go. Now, when it comes to linking faster, you really do want to get into this idea of having one rhymed with a bun, two with a shoe, etc., to make these pegs where you can memorize a lot faster. Now, there are different ways to create these mnemonic pegs, and if you ever get hold of the Bruno First trainings and these individual little lesson books, they're so fun. You'll go through some of them. But briefly, there's only so many ways to do this. And the first is number rhymes, which we just talked about. So you can have one as a bun, or one as a sun, two as a shoe, three as a bee, etc. Highly recommend developing that, but it really only lets you get up to 10. 10 is a hen, because 11 and 12, you can get into that. But then when you get to 13, 14, 15, you just have teen, and that gets very difficult to rhyme. So number rhymes really cap at 10, if you ask me. But then there's number shapes. These also cap at around 9. So number shapes would be 1 is a candle, 2 is a swan, 3 is handcuffs, etc. And I have created the mystery of the magnetic numbers, which will come out eventually for kids, that shows this. And you can see on the cover, there's a 2 for a swan, and there's a 1 for a candle there, and a 7 for a boomerang. And that's another mnemonic hook system or a peg system. This is one of the problems in memory training, is that people use different words for essentially the same thing. And then new people get really, really confused because, well, is it a hook? Is it a peg? And really, ultimately, all of these things are associations that involve linking at the core. It's just really just linking all the way down, no matter what you call it. The other technique that I recommend people get into as soon as possible is the major system. And then you have a PAO system, person, action, object system. And really, I think the best way to make a PAO system is to base it on the major. And this can all seem like a big mindful of stuff to learn in the beginning, but just take it step by step and it'll all come together in your practice. Each of these techniques are really a tutorial unto themselves, and I've created them. But for simple memory exercise, really just get started with one of them. And the number rhyme is an exercise unto itself when you complete it. And the reason why I'm stopping at like 3 is a bee, 4 is a door, is because it robs you of the opportunity to do the following exercise, which is itself very, very powerful and foundational. Get out a piece of paper and a pen, ideally in a little memory journal that you make for yourself to keep, and write down 1 is a, 2 is a, and just rhyme all the way up till 10. The exact designations are up to you, but for the sake of making it truly magnetic, try to think about a specific assignment. So if you go 1 is a sun, is there a way that you could link it to a sun that's very specific to you? So one of my favorite uses of the sun is Danny Boyle's movie, Sunshine. And so I think of the movie theater where I saw that movie several times and the poster on the wall outside of the screening room. So that's a very, very specific 1 is a sun. If it's 1 is a bun, then I think about a very, very specific bun. And yes, I have one in my memory. So stop. Make sure you write out the list, come up with your rhymes. And I'm going to assume that you've stopped the recording and done the exercise. And now let's go back to this original, what do we have? Apple, book, and dog list, right? But this time, rather than creating some sort of story to link them, imagine the sun is melting the apple. And if 2 is a shoe for you, then a stinky shoe is crushing the book. And if 3 is a bee, then a swarm of bees is carrying the dog away. And now these number rhymes or pegs or hooks are helping you not just remember each item, but you'll be able to remember their position in the list. Because if you think about the dog being carried away with bees, well, bee is rhymed with 3, so now you know that's the 3rd thing on your list. So one of the neat characteristics of number rhymes and number shape systems is that they help you easily remember exactly what the item was in the list that you're remembering by number. And that can give you daily exercise where you're exercising a couple of things at the same time. Every day, just memorize a list of 10 things and you'll be able to exercise both the use of the mnemonic system and your memory for objects. And so it's a really, really powerful way to get sharper memory. And it's going to help you think more clearly and help other people. Like if you have kids, you'll be able to do this activity with them. Now let's talk about the idea of pegs or hooks alphabetically rather than numerically and how that they can be used in different ways. For example, when I prepared for my TEDx talk, I didn't use number rhymes because that would be quite confusing. The point is to use the words and then use associations based on the way the words are spelled. So the opening line is, how would you like to completely silence your mind? And the images that I used are alphabetically linked. So instead of, 1 is a sun, so how, I would have Howie Mandel getting burned by the sun or something like that. I just get rid of the number rhyme and just go straight for H and H. Howie Mandel is like how. How would you like? Well, he has a big stick of wood and he's smashing the like button on a YouTube video like you could do right now. And so this stick of wood in his hands sounds like wood. How would you like? The YouTube button. How would you like? Right? And it's just so amazing how that works. And it's absurd, right? But it makes it very, very memorable. So I could then reconstruct the talk verbatim. Now, I didn't do the entire TEDx talk like that. I also used what's sometimes called the keyword method. So I just took the big idea words in many, many cases. But when I wanted to make sure that I got the words exactly right, then I would do it on a word-by-word basis. So exactly how that you select keywords and then get entire sentences out of them is really something that you have to explore. But at the end of the day, if you want to be word perfect, make sure you have an image alphabetically for every single word. And this can be a little bit of a chore or a task, but really, if you think about like a line from Shakespeare I memorized once upon a time, Sonnet 59, I believe, if there be nothing new, but that which is hath been before, how are our brains beguiled? So if there be there, and then later in the sentence it has that. Well, they both start with TH, so I can use Thor, and for there he can be pulling on his hair, and for that he can be pulling on his hat. And you get down to that level of granularity, and it's really, really helpful. But you can use that daily for practice. Just pick up a book and read it and look at the first two letters of words and figure out what could be your alphabetical association. So TH, Thor. If it's AND, then you could have me, Anthony, for AN words, right? And there's anthropology, anthology, not just and, but you could use me over and over and over again for all of those words if you wanted, or Anthony Hopkins, or whoever. The whole point is as a fun memory exercise, is to get out a journal and make sure that you have an image for every letter of the alphabet, and ideally one for every two letters of the alphabet, which most names will have anyway. So if you pick Brad Pitt for B, Brad Pitt will already automatically be BR. He will also be P, and he will automatically be PI because of the spelling of the name. So you might not come across a lot of PI words that you need to memorize, but if you do, well, then you could use Brad Pitt. But if it's just P words that you have to memorize, you could still use Brad Pitt. That's the principle of alphabetical association, and it's really just pegs or hooks looked at a different way without numbers, but straight to the alphabet. Now there's another fun exercise that you can do as often as you like that also involves the alphabet, and it's sometimes called first letter mnemonics. I would never try to memorize a speech this way, but it's really, really fun. And what you do is you just take the first letter of each word in a passage and you write them down. So if we take that Shakespeare phrase, if there be nothing new but that which is hath been before, we would boil that down to ITBNNBTWHBB. I think that's correct. And that's what we would write down. And you wouldn't have memorized it first, but if you take any phrase that you haven't memorized and you just write down the first letter of each word, then you mentally look at it later. You let a minute or two pass, and then you try to fill in the blanks. And what this does is it practices active recall. You're stimulating the parts of your mind that will let you rebuild the phrase from minimal cues. And that is super, super powerful. Research shows that it boosts retention. And, I just use it a couple of times a year. I'll just take a book, grab it, Striking Thoughts by Bruce Lee or what have you, and open it up, have the image creates dependency, TICD, right? And then look at that TICD and go, the image creates dependency. You can even just do it without writing and set it aside for a couple of minutes, come back to it, and you'll find that you have great recall that improves the more that you practice this first letter, or sometimes it's called the initial letter mnemonic. And probably you'll find more clues and ideas for little exercises that you can tailor-make for yourself by reading the science yourself. At the end of the day, I think with this one, for me personally, less is more, but your mileage may vary, and you may find that you want to do it every single day, and I'm sure that you will. Now, another memory training activity that you can do, actually several different kinds of activities, involve decks of cards, playing cards. And there's different ways to memorize a deck of cards, and there's different ways to use it as an activity. But in general, one thing that I like to do is memorize cards. 2 days ago, I was in a cafe, just shuffle them up, very loud music, lots of people talking, and very hard to concentrate. But I memorized 20 cards, and I only got about 85% of them correct because of all of the noise in the cafe. But still, that's really, really good, and I'm having that attention and focus and concentration exercised, and then also the use of the mnemonic techniques that I use to memorize the cards. And very briefly, what I do is I have a number associated with each card based on its identity, and then that number is turned into an image. So I don't see Queen of Hearts in my mind. What I see are the apes at the beginning of Stanley Kubrick's Space Odyssey and the bone that they're throwing up. I won't go into the whole ins and outs of how that I derive that, but it basically is the major system built to a 00 to 99 PAO, so that this card has a number, and then I use an image from movies and so forth. So the next one is 2 of Spades, which is Tintin, and the next one is 5 of Diamonds, which is Mr. McFeely from Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. 8 of Clubs is sometimes I can't even remember right away what the Sabretooth from X-Men, that sort of thing. And you'll find that you come up with whatever you come up with. But this particular deck is something that I've memorized, and it's the same deck that I use all the time. And if you want to watch a full tutorial of how the different ways that I use it to practice memory, I think the video was called This is Practice, and I show myself shuffling up that deck in a particular way and then reassembling it in quadrants in 4 different piles, because I try to, after it's shuffled up, as I look through it, I go, oh, this card belongs in the first quarter, this card belongs in the third quarter, this card belongs in the fourth quarter, this is in the second quarter, and I reassemble the deck that way as quickly as I can, which is an exercise that I learned from Michael Close, who you should check out if you're interested in memdeck work, as it's called. But there's many, many different exercises like that. And the other, of course, is just to shuffle up a deck of cards, memorize it, and then practice recalling it. So different exercises like that are very, very powerful. And that leads us to talk about the gold standard exercise, which is to use memory palaces. Because at the end of the day, the way that I'm able to remember one deck of cards in its order to practice with over and over and over again, assembling after shuffling in the exact same order, so I always know it's Queen of Hearts and 2 of Spades and 5 of Diamonds and 8 of Clubs, that's in a memory palace. And the memory palace, sometimes it's called method of loci, sometimes people pronounce that low-key. It's a technique that just leverages your spatial memory. And every time you're using it, you're practicing your spatial memory. So if you're new to the term, a memory palace is a mental technique where you visualize or you experience mentally, you don't have to see it in your mind, a familiar location. And a lot of people start with their home and they place vivid, memorable images at specific spots along a route. And then later, you mentally walk through that location to recall the information that you've stored along that route, and you're basically just using your brain's natural strength in remembering places. Now, a lot of people object to this, and they say, but I don't remember places very well. And that can be. But at the end of the day, if you just break it down to corners and walls, if you remember a home and you remember you had a bedroom in that home and you just use the corners and the walls, well, Queen of Hearts can be on one corner, 2 of Spades can be on the wall, then 5 of Diamonds can be on the corner, etc. Or if it's a phrase in Latin, then the first word can be on the corner, the second word can be on the wall. If it's a phrase from Shakespeare, first word on the corner, second word on the wall, etc. And it's really just like laying out breadcrumbs along a path. And the breadcrumbs are a special kind of breadcrumb. They're mental associations that link to those words in particular ways. So if we take that Shakespeare, if there be nothing new, well, I shared how I have Thor there, but for if, I have Iphigenia, who is a mythological figure, right? And that person interacts with Thor, and that happens in a familiar path that's just outside of this room. And that location is easy to recall. So you're pairing together a familiar journey with super simple alphabetical associations that makes the target information leap to mind as you revisit each and every one. And I use this technique to memorize the TEDx talk, foreign language vocabulary, entire speeches, decks of cards. It's all backed by science. We've seen the brain scans. There's a study by Eleanor Maguire in Nature. In that study, they found that the memory palace literally reshapes your brain to match the neural patterns of what memory champions do. So you don't even have to train like a memory champion in order to have the same sorts of things going on in your brain. And it works for beginners too. It just takes a little bit of study and a little bit of practice. And the best part is that all the other techniques that we talked about today, you can use them inside of memory palaces. Those number rhymes, well, each station in a memory palace can have a rhyme ready to go. So if we look at my bookshelf back here, it can be that there's a giant sun there that reminds me that that's the first station, because there's always a sun there. And then over here, there's just a giant pair of shoes in my imagination that help me remember that that's always the second station. I don't happen to use that very much, but when I have, this gets a little bit into the weeds, but basically by having a secondary image for ace and 2 and 3, etc., you're able to tell where the individual aces are. So you just go ace of spades is at the 10th, and you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and that should be 10th, and then ace of diamonds at the 21st, and so on. That's a wonderful thing to do, and you can just practice by writing out the numbers of each position, making an image, showing where they are in the Memory Palace, having the mnemonics help you out in that regard. That may be a little deep into the rabbit hole of mnemonic training that you want to do, but it is something that you could learn to do and do as a daily practice. But in terms of ways that are a little simpler, pick a speech, a historical famous speech, or a poem, or song lyrics, or a passage from a book that you'd like to memorize verbatim, and practice that in a memory palace. One of my favorites is just to memorize in different languages. So in this book, I have written out the original Sanskrit of the Atma Bodha. This is a special translation of the Atma Bodha, and sometimes I only memorize a syllable a day, but the progress is astonishing over time. And I have now 2,000 words or so in Sanskrit. And it's just like Turtva, Moharnavam, Hatva, Ragadveshtirakshashan, Yoga, Shantasanta Yuktratma, Ramo Varajate. And it just does so much good to the brain to daily add a little bit more. So the techniques you've learned today are powerful, but it's not just about memorizing. It's also about taking back your mind and making it physical. Try to always start with some kind of physical attention and focus exercise, because that's going to help when you use memory techniques in daily life. When you train your memory, you're never just improving your recall. You need to train to focus, to think clearly on the fly, to track information in space, and that's going to help you have the power that you're looking for. So we make it too mental. And the great thing about cards is you get them in your hand and you make it physical, you make it much more spatial, and get the initial mnemonic exercise or the first letter mnemonic exercise going in your little journals. And you're going to have a much bigger difference than if you just try to make it always mental. Because the real difference between people who stay stuck and those who rise to higher levels of skill, they are absolutely in the physical world. And to help drive that home, if you found these tips useful, watch my video called "This Habit Separates Self-Taught Geniuses from Everyone Else" next. It will change how you approach really every day for the rest of your life. Now, I know that sounds like a big promise, but if you take it seriously and you really put the information there into action, it will change just about everything. Now, one last tip before we go. Every day, for just a couple minutes a day, walk backwards. Now, why on earth would you want to do that? Well, it's been shown in studies, and it's an ancient Qigong technique. It engages your memory and your mind in a completely different way. Your brain has to recall, so to speak, the space behind you. It has to predict where your body should go and process time itself, in a way, in reverse. And I know it sounds strange, but the science is clear that it improves recall. Apparently, it's also very good for your knees. And some of the studies show that even just imagining yourself walking backwards helps your brain. So tomorrow, take 5 steps backwards, literally. Make it part of your memory ritual after or before you start throwing those balls in the air to practice your target scanning and get your mind focused. And just make sure that you're in a safe place to do these kinds of activities. I had a thing where I was doing it at the outdoor gym, and I walked into one of the benches, and thank goodness I just sat myself down, because it could have been a lot worse, especially since that the outdoor gym is right next to a big cliff that goes down a hill, and you got to be careful with these things, and I myself have to remind myself to be careful. So make sure it's safe to walk backwards wherever you do it. And at the end of the day, remember, smash that like button, and let's help the world remember how much memory matters. Thanks as always, and until we have a chance to speak again, keep yourself magnetic.